Hey, Renee.
Hi, Annette.
Today we're going to talk about trauma bonding.
Trauma bonding.
I went ahead and it was like, you know what? I'll just Google it so I could give a definition that hopefully will cut across and explain it for everybody. And so let me read that straight on. Where trauma bonding occurs is when a narcissistic it's a person who repeats a cycle of abuse with another person, which fuels a need for validation and love from the person being abused.
Mm.
And this can happen in all different kinds of relationships. Most often you see it between romantic relationship, but not always. And so I really think it's important because I see people who have been sexually abused end up usually in these kind of trauma bonding situations more easily than those who have not been abused.
True. And feeling the need for what again? What did it say?
Well, they feel the need for that validation and love that this
Validation.
narcissistic person is giving them.
Yes. And thus they keep going back to them for that.
Yes. So it sounds like you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just had to read the definition and you went, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now I remember what that one is. Yeah.
I remember what that one is. Yes.
Seen it. Oh, yeah.
Signs for a narcissistic person, because that's the person who usually is doing this trauma bonding.
They're creating it.
They're creating that need. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a person that just has an extremely hard time of having empathy. They have lack of empathy. They need attention, but they need attention all the time.
Mm-hmm. And they need to be the one that's always right and the one in control of it always.
Repressed insecurities. So they got insecurities, but they don't want you to see them. They push them down, that's for sure. They have few boundaries. They have an inflated ego. So it always seems like they're the one, like you said, in control, on top, but their ego is they are much more than actually what they are.
Yes.
A disregard.
They feel they're the most, they feel that they're the most valuable always in the room, the smartest, the most valuable.
And people don't even realize it. They feel like people don't realize it. And they're taking advantage of them at times. They got that inflated ego. They have a disregard for others. So if somebody's just not their cup of tea, they actually will just disregard them. They don't, they won't recognize them. Everything is it's somebody else's fault. Look at you. Yes.
Yeah.
And underneath it, they do have a fear of abandonment. That's why they need to be in such control.
They drive because of that, or they drive all these other behaviors because of that.
Yes.
They don't want to lose that control. They don't want to lose the abandonment of having a person around them. So even if they lose one person due to divorce or whatever it might be, or the person got their eyes open and they fled, they're immediately looking for their next person that they can.
For Renee and I, we can kind of spot somebody who's being this way to somebody who's sexually abused in their past by seeing them go, oh my goodness, Renee, I just met this person. And you're going, really? Who are they? Tell me about them. And what they're telling us is they're being love bombed. Being love bombed means they are excessively, they're right at the beginning of the relationship. Maybe they met him last night, but already since then, they've gotten like 30 text messages from them. They got a gift that just came from Amazon delivered to them. And then they got a fruit basket later that evening. It is like a love bomb. And in the text messages, they're showing so much appreciation for this and that. And they're just saying how great this person is. And that's just feeding the ego. And that's just feeding the love-starvedness of those who had been sexually abused.
Absolutely. Building them up either with speaking of their beauty, building them up of you could never do anything wrong. You're so perfect. Just all of the affirmations that one would like to hear. They know exactly which ones to throw out very quickly, very fast, and in an abundance.
It's like Valentine's Day, but right away and every day
Yeah, and
until,
every hour.
yeah, until all of a sudden this person becomes under the control of them
Yep.
because they don't
Yep.
want to not live a day without somebody adoring them like this.
Yeah. Adore is a good word.
When you see them cover, so this is a sign when we're talking to somebody and they're covering for this person who they're dating or that is their husband, and they're covering for them, lying for them,
Mm.
or they're keeping a secret. And well, and all of that is just so constantly just showing red flags to
Yeah.
Renee and I.
Or they will take ownership of something that happened when
Yes,
it was the abusive person doing it to them. They
it
will
was their
spin
fault.
yeah, they'll spin the story so it looks like it's their fault. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the abuser goes ahead and treats them badly. And then we're asking why this person has bruises on them or why did this happen and all of this. Well, it was my fault. I didn't remind, and this and that. And they have all these reasons. And we're thinking, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't your fault. But
No.
they're convinced of it because this person adores them. This person is everything to them at this point. They really feel like they've given their trust over. It's taken so long to learn to trust somebody, but this person, boy, they feel like they've gone in head over heels and they are
Right.
just so infatuated with them to the point where even when Renee and I are talking to these persons that are the victim, they'll start distancing themselves from Renee and I because they don't want to take part in the arguing of trying to defend themselves. We just aren't seeing it correctly. We're looking at this other person too negatively. And this is guy or girl could do this, be the narcissist in the relationship going on.
Right. Yeah.
But they'll separate from family, friends, even neighbors if they're not on their side.
What's unfortunate about this part of it is they'll even tell us it was really great. It was almost like the honeymoon stage in that relationship, and then once that narcissist basically gains that buy-in, infatuation, love, however you want to call it, once
That
there's that
bond.
buy-in, they know they can then start doing the other things. And I have had friends that will share the most ugliest things that their spouse or that man or woman has done to them. I'm like, who allows another human being to do that to them? But when they're telling it, they think it's normal, very similar to, even when I was younger, being abused, thinking it's in everybody's home, it's almost like this brainwash that they get that this is just normal behavior. Every relationship has this kind of stuff in it. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And so when Annette's saying this arguing, we're not arguing with our people that we're talking with, our friends and family and the ones we love. We're trying to open the eyes of the situation of, well, is that something so and so would do in their relationship? And if you heard it out of that person's mouth, would it sound the same? So we're just trying to bring light to the situation of how evil it is.
Right, because they're being so blinded because, like you said, there's all this in the beginning that just romanticizes them off their feet type situation. And they love it. And they've told everybody about this person and so on and so on. The problem is that when all of a sudden it goes from Jekyll to Hyde, it causes trauma that triggered from way back when. And they feel very stuck in that situation. And they're just not sure who they're going to get. But at the same time, it's usually if they start reacting with a pullback, the person comes back with all that love and gifts and kind words immediately, or they start crying, oh, please forgive me, it was a one-time thing. I think the number one thing I hear from the victims is usually, listen, I've already put a couple of years into this relationship and I know I can change them.
A lot of times it's, I know I can change myself before they say, I know I can change him. That's a lot of self work that they think they can do to make him, he'll be better. You know, I won't set him off. Yeah.
It was my fault. I shouldn't have brought that up.
Yes.
And some of the things to bring up that might trigger is usually financial stress. They could be work stress. It could be the narcissistic person has mental health issues. Or the victim starts talking like it's the person's fault, trying to put the blame where it actually should go. And that explosion, the victim might try to make some boundaries because I hear that that's a good thing they should have in their life. Boom, that's going to blow up. Why did they even attempt something like that?
Absolutely.
And so now all of a sudden they have these violent outbursts and emotional manipulation that at times have blown my mind, where I've seen the victims just cave just because a person starts to cry.
Yeah.
And they do look like they're sorry. But after that moment, out of the same mouth comes the verbal threats.
Absolutely.
They're sorry that you caused them to go and do that, Renee.
That's not... And the sad thing is that manipulation, it's so convincing to the point of, I know one gentleman that finally was called out and he played the God card. I'll get better. I'll go to church. I'll find God. I'll become a Christian. I'll even go get a mentor. And they did all these things. They did all the things that they knew in the Christian world. You know, somebody that wants to get help, this is what they would do. They would go get counseling. They would go get a mentor. They will, you know, ask Jesus to be their savior. So they did all that. And then at the same time, it was the love bombing, but it was through the faith piece, if that makes sense, and a manipulation so that charges would not be put on that person. It was not a good situation with this narcissist behavior.
Nothing gets resolved and nothing moves forward. If John and I were to have a serious situation and we needed to go to counseling, the goal of the counseling is so we can move forward and work on communication and getting past that. But that's not what happens in a trauma bond.
No.
That narcissist is leading that, and they don't want things to change.
Right.
It means, because that would mean they got to change, and they do not want to change. It seems to me that there's always a pattern. So if I'm working with somebody that has a trauma bond with somebody that's just incredibly unhealthy, there's always this calm where times are real good, if that makes sense. Feelings from the last blow up have died down to where it's now 2 weeks in and life is really good. In fact, the narcissistic person brought home a puppy or something. I mean, it was a big, and now they're being so loving to this animal and it's bonded us together. All the tension is gone. All I could think of is nothing's been taken care of. No. This is a storm warning going to happen.
Yeah. I've seen it even in situations where a person has moved out with the child from the narcissistic person and, you know, needing to get help from an agency for herself. And I find out they're back together.
It blows your mind, right?
Yeah. I'm like, what's going on? Well, he's buying diapers now. He's now helping, you know, with finances and stuff like that. They find a way to even meet a need that you have at that moment or meet a desire that you have at that moment. And that becomes another, I call it that little love bomb thing. That's a facade. We know it's not going to last long, but we're the friend on the outside looking in. And it's hard when you're the person on the inside receiving it. You're thinking, oh, wow, maybe things are changing. Oh, wow, maybe they finally got the message. Oh, wow, maybe we've broken out of that and we're moving forward to something else. And unfortunately, that's not usually the case.
No, because nothing's been done about what had happened.
Right.
That needs
You
to
don't
be
want to talk
worked
about
through.
conflict.
We all have ugly moments, but they need to be worked through with
Yeah.
true forgiveness, true apologies. Now, trauma bonds, the way we've been talking about it right now, is usually a romantic relationship. I want to talk about trauma bonding with siblings. That is huge. And it's also hard to separate out of
Mm.
because
Yeah,
they feel like it's family and family comes first. Ooh, that's a toughie.
absolutely. That's true.
But abuse is abuse. And if you went to a family gathering and the whole time you were there, one of your siblings was cutting you down verbally constantly, and you took them aside and you tried to talk with them about it. This was something that happened even when you were younger,
Mm.
and you finally said no, and you tried to put up boundaries. But of
Right.
course, they needed to cross those boundaries, and you stayed at the family gathering. That would show you didn't have boundaries, of
Mm.
course, because you stayed. I know for you, you have to miss a lot of family gatherings just because of your illness due to sensitivity to what's in buildings, chemical wise, mold wise, things like that. And it is hard on you. I know you would love to be at family gatherings, birthdays, weddings, you name it, but there's limitations that you have.
Right.
Now, those limitations you put on yourself. You
Correct.
put those boundaries on yourself because you can go. I know you could go. You'd end up very sick, might end up in the emergency room because you can't breathe.
Yeah.
But you could go, but you'd be abusing your body in a sense.
Correct.
And the sibling abuse is sad because it usually will involve other siblings that maybe are not in the abusive state, but it affects everybody overall when that happens.
True. Yeah. And it's harder to say no when it's one thing to say no to an individual and going to their house and it's just the two of you versus a whole, a whole family or a whole gathering or a wedding or whatever it is. It's hard to put those boundaries down of missing the other people that aren't the narcissist, who aren't the one creating that trauma.
Right. And you got your kids and you want your kids to go to see their cousins, things like that. And it stops everything.
Yep, it does. It's unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
But there are ways around that are healthy. It's kind of similar to what I've had to do. Well, how can I then see people in a safe way? It's create a controlled environment, find the safe place, find the individuals who I could be with, and create a different place. So I would say the same thing for those that are running into that with family. Sorry, I can't go to this today. And then reach out to those individuals that are the healthy ones and meet with them at separate times, separate places. And even mentioning to the other relatives, I can no longer be around this person at events. If I know that this person is going to be there, please understand I won't be present. They're not respecting my boundaries, And sometimes we need to do that with the rest of the family that are the healthy people, letting them know.
And some of them may not understand, even though they try, they still may not be in agreement with you, but you got to, just like some people may not be in agreement that you're missing a wedding.
Right.
Renee, you just got to go ahead and decide right then and there. Well, that's up to them if they want to be upset that they don't,
Yep.
but you
Yep.
know what it feels like to have to end up in an emergency situation and the long-term recovery.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's not worth it.
And doing all the cleanup afterwards of the choice that was being made.
Yeah.
It's the same thing of walking into a family situation with that.
But
Is
that's unhealthy.
you will
Yeah.
have to be the one to clean up afterwards.
Coworkers. This one's a tough one as well. You might work at a company and everything is going great, and some new employees come in or whatever it is, and just one of them comes in and they're actually someone, maybe let's say you're training, and they turn out to be having narcissistic behavior. They're not going to take responsibility. Go down that list we had just said. And that makes it for a difficult moment if you aren't prepared ahead of time to have boundaries. to be walked over and not even realize that you're in this trauma bonding abuse going on. A lot of times people don't realize they're in that kind of a relationship until it's pointed out.
Oh, yeah. So can they not go to HR?
They could go to
You
HR.
know?
Now, it's been going on for a while, usually before somebody recognizes it or somebody else has pointed it out. More than anything, someone else
Right.
has pointed it out. They can go to, of course, to human resources and bring up the subject, that type of thing. But it's very difficult because usually the narcissistic person looks really good on paper, looks
Yeah.
really good because they've built this bubble around them so that people are usually serving them and making them look incredibly good.
I worked for somebody like that. And it's true. You look for validation, even from those bosses.
Sometimes you just have to step away. If human resources is not going to step in and do anything, if it's challenging your mental health, it's time to start looking for someplace else to work.
Absolutely.
If they're not going to back you up.
Yep. I have a friend that's done that recently in the last year. She said that the environment at work was so toxic that, and it was a great paying job with bonuses coming soon. And she's like, it's not worth it for my mental and emotional health. It is not worth sticking around for that, no matter how much money comes. She said, bye.
It must have been bad.
Yeah. But I'm proud of her because she learned to set that boundary, and boundaries are tough. That's one of the toughest things for somebody who has been sexually abused, to finally stand up for themselves when they
Yes.
see a wrong being done against them, again, to voice, hey, that's not okay. And for somebody even in a work environment to say, hey, bye, here's my 2-week notice. It takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of faith as well, because you've invested a lot in your work. Most of us do. To be able to turn around and give a 2-week notice like that and look for something that's more healthy. Sometimes you don't think there is anything better out there, both in relationships, with family, and with work. You don't think there's anything better out there that you're going to be able to experience. And this friend has. The boundaries help you value yourself more. It's not just a no to the other person, but it's helping you recognize what you value and what are you putting the fence around so the wolf doesn't come back in and steal it. You're putting up those parameters of protection and health. Yeah. And we're not taught that when we are abused. We're not taught that when we're in a narcissistic relationship. You're not taught that when you're getting love bombed and they're feeding off of your need for validation. They're abusing you.
Neighbors. So you can have a neighbor that's actually doing that to you, especially with the whole guilt thing. Hey,
sorry, the picture I got was build a higher fence, but we can't all do that. I have heard that.
That was good. People. That was good, Renee.
Sorry, I have heard that from people. Like,
yeah, I've heard it too, where said, well, I've watched your kids or whatever it is, so now you got to watch my kids. Or they didn't realize that this person was being so nice, doing all these things, and so then what they were expecting back, they were thrown when the person said, well, I thought because I did this that you would do this. Yes, I was like, whoa.
The big strings attached relationship.
That's not love.
No, that's not unconditional friendship and unconditional love. That's conditional.
That's conditional.
That's manipulation.
Yes.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. No bueno. I wanted to bring up kidnapping, the Stockholm syndrome, where people who have been under the control of somebody, whether they've been kidnapped for a week or whatever it is, they're relying on their captors for food, drink, everything, that type of thing. And then if they see their kidnappers or whatever crying, they're feeling for them. They don't want them to be hurt. They all of a sudden start having these feelings towards somebody who's actually abusing them, who actually has attacked them. And a lot of people who've been sexually abused and know their abuser at times will try to protect their abuser when the tables are flipped, because they have this relationship with them that is beyond what other people's relationships have gone. Does that make sense,
Yeah.
Renee?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to go ahead and report the pastor because they'll end up in jail and the people would find out. And that'd be an awful situation. Not just
Yeah.
for the pastor, but his wife. It would hurt his wife. It would hurt their family. They're thinking these things going down the whole tube, and they're forgetting that they're the ones that are being abused at this time, and it needs to stop.
I've seen that not just with the kidnapping pieces.
No, that's what we're saying with those who've been sexually abused.
Yeah. Yeah. They will protect. Not because they love what's being done to them, but sometimes our empathy is just taken advantage of. And sometimes our compassion just gets blinded. And we think everybody's human, everybody should have a second chance. Everybody, we come up with these things that become bigger than what the law is. They'll change. They'll get better. It's not so bad. They won't do it to anybody else. We convince ourselves of all these things. And therefore, it's not so big because we've made it that way.
Right.
In our mind.
Yeah.
But the reality is they are still abusive. They still need to be held accountable. Protecting
them is just keeping them from getting help.
Yeah.
And facing the consequences.
Yeah. That part right there is one of the hardest things. It was hard for me to come forth and even report my abuser, and then even going into the courtroom, it was, don't put him to jail. That's a 13-year-old, 13, 14-year-old's mind. That's where I was, is protect, because he's family, protect. Because that's the only one I know as a dad. You know what I mean? Who wants to have their dad in jail?
Right. And it makes complete sense.
Yeah. But I would say there was a trauma bond there because I was trying to protect him at that point. I reported it because I wanted him to get help. But the help that he should have gotten, I didn't want all that to happen.
Right. You wanted to control.
I didn't want him to work hard. I didn't want things to be hard for him. I wanted it to be.
You just want to
move on and be good.
Just make it stop.
Yeah, make it stop. I shouldn't say hand slap. I wanted there to be counseling. I wanted there to be help. I wanted there to be a whole changing of everything. But I didn't want it to be jail as a consequence. That's what was deserving of it. You know what I mean?
So what does healthy look like? Well, we're talking about relationships built on trust and honesty and mutual respect. I never see mutual respect when it comes to somebody who is bound in this abusive relationship.
Well,
it doesn't exist.
No, they're always taking, always a taker. Not the victim, but the perpetrator is always the taker. The vampire, they're sucking you dry.
Communication. John and I welcome disagreements for the sake that we know we're going to be able to talk it through and probably come to a compromise of some sort.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a disagreement on how to do a certain thing. And so it's important for us to have this communication going. You don't see that in that type of relationship. The trauma bond, it doesn't exist. The consequences would be too high.
Yeah. And those that have tried, they have learned, maybe they got their way round one, but they also saw the ugly beast rise. And the consequences become higher than, what do you call it? Higher than what you thought you were going to get.
No individuality. I love you and Eddie, but you both are two individual people and you have a lot of dislikes and likes that are the same, but you're both created so uniquely by God that it's great to have friendship with you both.
Yeah.
But the friendship I have with you is completely different than I have with Eddie on the things that we have in common. That individuality is something to enjoy and celebrate. Though sometimes I can't understand how John can not be like me 100%. That individuality is the part that makes me even love him more.
But the narcissist does not allow that. The narcissist will tell you even what to think, what to
My way,
believe,
my way.
even who to accuse, even what to think about people.
So let's talk about breaking free. So what we suggest
Heck yeah.
others to do
Let's say,
to break free.
yeah. Booyah. Yes.
I suggest that they get help from others. Definitely not from the narcissistic person. They're not going to get the help that they're needing that way wise.
No.
From a good counselor, pastoral help. They even have support groups. I think it helps them so much to be able to verbalize it, because then when they start verbalizing, this just happened, and we start asking questions, they're able to all of a sudden not be so blind as they were when it happened.
Right. Yeah. If I could give an example, one person that went to their pastor to share, they discovered that what was happening in the home was actually not just abuse, but there were some crimes. I forget what degree, whatever it was, but what was being done physically was not healthy. But they didn't know that until, I think, walking into that pastor's office and just kind of sharing. They might have had a hint of it in their spirit, but the pastor laid it out. This is a misdemeanor. This is a felony blank. This is a da 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 da. So it does take sometimes, all the time, having somebody else come in and weigh it with you if you're one that's in that situation, because you may not realize the weight of what you are in.
I agree with that. How many people have we worked with that they actually are addicted to this roller coaster, as I would call it? So they are just into the super high, wonderful. Our relationship is going really good, whether it be sibling or workplace or a romantic relationship. And then all of a sudden it just takes a deep dive on the roller coaster, and it's really bad, but they don't get off.
No.
It's time to get off the roller coaster, but they will stay on it because, oh my goodness, with the fights and the drama that happens, always seems to come the gifts, the "you're so wonderful, I'm sorry I did that," or whatever it is. And it just,
The drama thing is a big thing, and I'm not here to poo-poo drama, but I'm just telling you, drama's not healthy. Because just what you're saying, that high and low, when it's low and there's that fighting with that narcissist, but there's also this, those that are in it can become addicted to the drama.
it's an addiction of
it.
attention and
I want
fights.
I want to share this with my friend. I want to share this dirt. It's almost like you can't wait to get down to that drama moment, so then you can have a lash out, be able to express yourself to that narcissistic person, but then you feel like you got a ticket to be able to play drama with all your friends and whoever you're on Facebook with or whatever. It's like, now I can vent and da-da-da-da-da. But all you're doing is creating this ugly drama, but it's another one of those highs in a low.
You're getting the attention, what I call victim attention.
Yes, there's an adrenaline. There's like an adrenaline high that people get in the victim place and the drama moments.
I remember in high school, there was a lot of drama in high school. At least with the girls that I hung around, there was a lot of drama. It seemed like somebody would come back to school the next day and they'd have this story they could embellish on. And then another person would come back and they would have this incredible story they could embellish on. And the whole goal was to come in with a story you could embellish with, whether it was from a date or whatever they came back from to share about. And it was this constant outdoing the drama of the whole thing. And what we didn't realize, at least I didn't realize, was it builds stress into your life. It builds this tension in there. And that gets exhausting. And that's not healthy for you to always be at this tension, this high of
No.
worried about your friend going out on the date with this one guy or whatever it is, where everybody's been having a problem with them or that type of situation. But they did it anyways because it would bring them more attention, blah, 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 that type of thing. I find those that have been sexually abused. We did do a video on victim mentality. And I didn't realize until he wasn't my husband then, John, mentioned to me, why are you hanging with those people that constantly had that much drama? Because he'd go, why are you upset? Why are you crying? Well, this person has this going on in their life and it's just really bad. And then this person, and then he says every single time there's always somebody else with this incredible, they don't, if they had boundaries, this, and he's making sense. And yet I couldn't put it all together. And I didn't realize I was in the trap of just being part of this drama group
Yeah. Yeah.
of emotions. And when he said, you could step back from that. You don't have to show up during the snack time during high school. You could be busy in a class and just stay there longer, whatever it is. Because later on in the day, they're all done telling their stories and life goes on as normal. And wow, it brought such peace to my heart to not have to hear these inflated stories. And I realized I was on a roller coaster with them.
Yeah.
I personally chose to get on the roller coaster every single day with those girls. And when I stepped off, slowly others started stepping off of it as well.
That's huge. Difficult to do.
Oh
but
man,
huge.
I
But
wasn't
you
going to
did it.
be, I felt like I wouldn't be in the in crowd, and being in high
Right.
school,
Yeah.
that was important to be in the in crowd type thing. But at the same time, what John said made so much mature sense. I didn't have that maturity, but I knew that made so much sense and that I wanted that.
Amen.
I wanted that. That made sense that Jesus would function more in that way. He wouldn't participate in these one-up type situations. Yeah, sometimes we got to decide to get off the roller coaster and have boundaries set for ourselves.
Yeah. And that's even with the girlfriends, or the guy friends that are calling, and just, it's not just a high school situation where you're showing up, but some people have it's on their Facebook, it's on their messaging, or it's a phone call that you're always getting. Boundaries can be set even with those.
Yep. Not picking up the phone is a big deal.
Yeah. And sometimes having to say something.
Yeah.
Those can be the hard ones to do, but it can be done. I've had to do that.
Setting those healthy boundaries. We could put a link to Boundaries by Townsend in the notes, so you guys can get that book. But they got boundaries for teenagers. They got boundaries for marriage. They got so many different boundaries books, and they're all excellent for starters with just the basic boundaries book.
Yeah.
And I love the examples in the book just because makes so much sense. Here's this mother, people are taking advantage of her, but at the same time, she doesn't have boundaries.
Yeah.
She feels like people are taking advantage of her, and they are, but she doesn't have boundaries, and she's more than happy to have people walk all over her. So it's really good stories in there for us to be able to see ourselves easily
Through the characters. Absolutely.
Yes, the characters.
They've got it in video form too, because I taught it as a class and used the video portion of it for the workshop and just went through that. And it was, you can't help but watch it and go, oh, that's me, the person that can't say no, or the person that can't. I'm not going to go into all that because it's not our topic right now, but
But part of the breaking free with a good counselor or support group is developing those boundaries in there. Having a strategy of how you're going to be able to break free to have self-care out of the relationship that has bound you this way.
Right. And it can be tough when there's kids involved.
Ooh, yeah.
That makes it even a lot more harder to navigate, but there are ways to do it and to do it well.
And it isn't just healing or pulling away, it's also the healing from the mental and the trauma abuse from the whole situation, and
Right.
finding the roots in it that relate back to other parts of your life so you could understand more the reason of why you're triggered to let boundaries go.
Or why
Let
you're
yourself,
attracted to it.
and there you go. Well, I was attracted to the drama group of girls because they accepted me.
Mm.
I was let into the group and I was welcomed in, just like somebody who, let's say, a romantic relationship. Well, that person is being accepted. You long for acceptance. God's created a desire in us to
Yeah.
be loved, but I didn't see the danger in it. I didn't see the ups and the downs until all of a sudden it was obvious, and John was able to point that out to me, and how unhealthy it was for
Yeah.
me, how I was under stress and worried about these people so much that didn't have boundaries around them as well.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, we would encourage you to get help in that way. Ask God to help you find that counselor or that support group that would be in your area.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say like a church leader. I know for some people, they're like, oh, I just went to my friend. Friends are great. They're awesome. But I think it would also be a good thing to add to it somebody who is professional that knows how to work with the narcissistic, as well as a person who has been abused by a narcissistic person, as well as who works with the sexually abused. Because sometimes our friends can't hit all of those areas and recognize it all. Sometimes our friends, they can zone in on certain things and open your eyes to those, but the
Yes.
professional person can help you, give you more tools. The friend will be great at telling you, don't do that, don't go there, don't touch that text, don't respond. They will be that great cheerleader for you, and the great person to say, girl, where were you? You crazy. you know, they can point out things, but having that professional also in your pocket can help give you the tools you need so you don't return to it, so you don't pick up the next relationship that's the same and you weren't even aware. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard different people say, why do I keep picking up the same kind of guy? Why do I keep finding myself in the same group of friends? And why do I keep attracting these kind of people in my life? And
You need
you're looking for,
somebody from the outside looking in with you so that you could be able to see honestly what actually is going on, and to have somebody ask you great questions so you can
absolutely,
get more to the root of what happened in the beginning.
absolutely. And it not just be a kvetching moment and somebody that's not holding you accountable that you have to show up to next week and say how you played that out in a healthy way. Sometimes friends
Yeah.
can be a little laxed at that. I got great friends that will hold me accountable, but not everybody has that, and so that's why I push the professional piece when it comes to narcissism.
Yeah,
It's
trauma bonding is no joke. And to get out of it is not going to be something as simple as, well, I'm just going to stop that relationship with them.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Because we
Usually,
don't know all the details that are going on in that
right,
home for
right.
safety's sake. And
It's best to use much wisdom in it when you're
I
calling it
agree.
quits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks
I
for
do.
discussing it with me, Renee.
You're welcome.